Okay, welcome back everybody. Time to look at some enharmonically spelled German augmented 6 chords and 5/7 chords in context. So let's go ahead and start with this first piece in the packet. This is from Beethoven's Rondo, that's Opus 29, and it starts off in G major. And you can see that by the end it doesn't really look like G major anymore, tons of flats. So I'll start at the beginning and I'm going to play part of it very slowly for you. We'll go ahead and analyze the whole thing, not just the spot with the German augmented 6 chord. So we'll just look at that much music. Take a minute and start putting some Roman numerals on it yourself, if you'd like. I'm going to start analyzing at the beginning. Oops. In G major here. At the very beginning, of course, we start with 1. This is not the first measure of the piece, but it almost works like a, well, it's like a rondo, so there's different sections that kind of alternate, the keys change, etc. The accompaniment style changes as well. And so this is not measure 1, but it is the theme that comes back in the A section of the rondo. Anyway, you might have noticed that it sounded like we had some dissonance here, and this looks like a 5/7 chord, but there's 1 happening here. The pedal marking right here that you see is for the piano. It's not trying to tell you that there's a pedal there, but in fact there is a pedal right there. I like to note that and then go ahead and analyze what's going on above it. Let's see if we can put it somewhere, like, I'll just have to draw a little line right there. Head. And then what's going on above it is a 5/7 chord that changes inversions, but I'm just going to put 5/7 because I think the pedal obscures what inversion is happening. So then we go back to 1, like right here. We have that same phenomenon of the pedal right here. Followed by another 5/7 chord. So it's really just alternating between 1 and 5/7 at first. And the pedal keeps it from even really alternating very much. And then we end here with 1. Da 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 da. Except for I'm thinking my head is in the 2nd key. Just kidding, I was right. Okay. Now here, don't let all these C sharp non-chord tones confuse you. Think about it a little more simply than that. We just have 5, 6, 5, and 1. And then here, again, C sharp is a non-chord tone, and without it, it would be 5, 4, 3, and back to 1. Not too unusual so far. 5, 6, 5 again here. And then notice that this time when we go back to 1, it's minor 1. So in this case, we have some mode mixture And by that I mean we're just going to, remember, switch back and forth between here the major mode and the parallel minor mode, or vice versa. When I say mode mixture, that's usually what I mean. So now, notice that we've got some mode mixture. Just draw this to draw your attention to it. Okay. So, in this next case then, we go from minor 1 to E, C sharp, G, B flat. Actually, everything in here can count. The root of this chord depends on kind of where you think it's going. It repeats for 2 bars, so then where does it go after that? It goes simply to 5. And this chord that we skipped, if you stack that up into thirds, you might notice that that sounded like a fully diminished 7th chord, in which case, is it 5 or 7 of something? I think so. And so that makes this fully diminished 7, and in this case, could it be of 5? Because that's what happens 2 bars later. And indeed it could if we say C sharp is the root. So C sharp, E, G, and B flat makes that 7 diminished 7, but it's 6/5 of 5. Since I already used the slash, I'm not going to use another one. But then before going directly to 5, it goes here. We've got 1, flat 6, and sharp 4, and flat 3. So there's another, actually just a German 6 going to 5, doing its normal German 6 thing, not doing anything weird enharmonically. Then notice that this time it was spelled as sharp 4 here. I'm just going to draw your attention to that in the staff. And then when it comes back, now it's spelled as flat 5. So remember that sharp 4 was the thing that often gets respelled. And notice that the way it's spelled now, it's pointing us towards something else. So it's not pointing us toward D natural anymore as scale degree 5. Now it's acting as fa, and it wants to kind of collapse in. So here we actually have our German augmented 6 chord in the old key. And then when you have a way to do this, sometimes with different, depending on which software you might be using, if you're doing it digitally, it just doesn't cooperate very well. Like MuseScore doesn't have a way for me to do this super easily, this shape. But this is how we can note that a modulation is happening. In the old key, it is a German augmented 6 chord. In the new key, it is 5/7. And let's label the new key. The new key is A flat major. Oops, I gave that away. But if I have a 5/7 chord with E flat in its base, that means that E flat is scale degree 5, that makes A flat scale degree 1. So that continues, and then over here we have our new 1 chord. Our pedal from before also comes back, and we get a 5/4/2 chord kind of happening above it. So, not to blaze past what just happened here, to me it sounds very abrupt and strange, but you can see how we respelled that just by changing one note, and all of a sudden it becomes 5/7 in this other key. So there's our modulation using the German augmented 6 chord to respell it and turn it into a 5/7 chord in this new key. So this is our pivot. And I just want to point out to you that what these are really about is modulation. Pivot, chord, modulation. But it's chromatic. So you probably learned a pivot chord where it's like, you know, 1 in this key turns into 4 in this other key, or 5 or whatever. Or, you know, 6 in this key turns into 2 in that key. And they're very consonant and they're very diatonic. So now we're going to use some of those same principles to analyze pieces where the German augmented 6 chord is still acting like a pivot, but it modulates to someplace very far away. So G major and A flat major do not share a lot of chords the way that common chord, pivot chord modulation works. But this chord is so chromatic that it can fit in both. And note also that I said that you often modulate with this chord to somewhere a half step away. And that's right where we are. Okay, let's go on to this Mozart string quartet. And for this example, I'm going to play that's not a reduction. I'm going to play this on the piano, so it won't sound quite like a string quartet, but you'll get the idea. So we were going along in E flat major. Let's make some notes on the score about this, because it's chromatic pretty early on, even before the modulation happens. So we're in E flat major. This E flat as the key. We do start with a 1. Of course, you'll see that this is measure 42, so it's not the beginning of the piece. We're not in D minor anyway. So here's our 1 chord. Here we've got all the makings of the 1 chord plus flat scale degree 7, which you might recognize makes this secondary dominant of 4. And with the 7th in the bass, that makes it 5, 4, 2 of 4, like that. And then notice that where we go next is not actually major 4, 6 like you would expect, but minor 4, and it is in first inversion, 6 like that. This is another example of mode mixture, which I just love anyway. I think mode mixture always sounds so cool. Mode mixture. A minor 4 chord in a major key is mode mixture because normally we see minor 4 chords in minor keys. Okay, there's minor 4, 6. It goes to, look, another D flat like we had before. We've got E flat, G, B flat, and D flat. So that makes that another something of 4, but it's in a different inversion. So this time it's 5, 4, 3 of 4. And once again, it goes to, ooh, actually, am I wrong about the inversion here? I think I might be. Stop. I broke its brain. All right, anyway, let's make sure we get the inversion of that right. It's not actually, what's 4 in the key of E flat? Oh, okay, it's fine. And so then it goes down to 4 in root position. And then heads on down to, that's an E flat in the viola part, which makes that an E flat minor chord in first inversion, so more mode mixture. Let's draw another little line. And, okay. So 1, 6. And then here's our special chord. We're in E flat. Let's analyze this chord first in the context of E flat. So we've got an F major minor 7th chord. In the context of E flat, what's happening here? In the context of E flat, this is 5, 7 of 5, right? So B flat is 5, 5 in the key of B flat is F, and this is an F major minor 7th chord. So there's 5, 7 of 5. However, that's not how it resolves. It resolves like an augmented 6 chord would, because this goes down by a half step. So we'll draw another bracket and notice where it is resolving to. It's resolving to what sounds like, well, we have to, I guess, figure out first if this is an augmented, German augmented 6 chord, which it will be. Then in what key could this possibly be a German augmented 6? Well, we have F in the bass, if that's the lowered 7 or lowered 6, and if E flat slash D sharp is the sharp 4, then that makes that a German augmented 6 chord in A minor. Relative to where we, well, that's okay, we'll talk about that in a second. A minor. And we've got, in this case, in this bar, where do German augmented 6 chords go? Usually to 5. And here we have our beloved cadential 6/4 chord. Kind of like that. They don't exactly arrive at 5 and 3 at the same moment, but you get the idea. And then here we have a half cadence. So let's talk through that one more time. Okay, so we were going along in E flat. We had some mode mixture to make it E flat minor. Not a big deal because the tonic is still E flat. And then here we had what looked like a 5, 7 of 5. It doesn't resolve to 5, right? It would need to go to B flat for that to be the case. It resolves also in this kind of linear way. There's an E natural in this chord right here, and this kind of anticipates it. So we have F going down to E, and E flat, which is really the same as D sharp, going up to E natural, and then we have an A, and we have a C, right? Keep your viola or your alto clef, handy. So it doesn't resolve the way it's supposed to, and it doesn't resolve as a 5, 7 of something would, and it kind of has this way of pushing out its resolution like that, so that we go up and down by step in those outer voices in this case. And that means that it's a German chord. Well, if it's a German chord, then what key would it be a German chord in? That's how you have to kind of work backwards and think about that. So just to make a note here, 5 or secondary 5, 7 chords can also be reinterpreted enharmonically. So it's a special quality that chord has to be able to spell it in those different ways. Note how far you can get then from E flat major, E flat to A minor. Those two keys are related by tritone. They're as far apart as keys can be. So if we look at the first example, here we were going just the German chord in one key and the 5, 7 chord of another key, and they're half step apart. But if you have a 5, 7 of something else, then you can actually kind of get anywhere. So it really is almost like it's like a wormhole, so that you could really get to all these different places with smooth voice leading. So here's Waltz of the Flowers. This is our last example in this packet. Out of tempo probably the whole time. use chords. We'll probably go back through some of that. So here we start in D major. We start with 1, major 1. We have another pedal. Notice how popular these pedals are with these romantic composers. Above that pedal, we have E, G, B flat, and D in the bass. So we actually have above the pedal a fully diminished 7th chord. C sharp is in the chord on the 2nd beat, so that's the root of this chord right there. Like that. And then we go back to 1. Oops, why is it so little? I don't know. Here. Listen to how dissonant that is with the pedal. Notice how that sounds like a 5/7 chord? Now all of a sudden we've changed keys. So chromatic. Sorry. So here, if we just take this in the key of D major, we know that something has happened by the time we get here. But in the beat before that, the bar before that, we've got 1. We've got G sharp, which is sharp 4. We've got 3, although it's not lowered. So we've got if we have D, F sharp, A, and C, sometimes you have to look at it and see like, well, what if I respelled one of those notes? If B sharp was spelled as C, then it would look like a D major minor 7th chord, in which case it would look like 5/7 of 4. And it is, but it's also the moment when we pivot. And if you're like, this is really confusing, then you're not alone, don't worry. It is confusing. It's also our German augmented 6 of the new key that we're going to. You might have also been able to tell that we were going to F sharp minor. You might have been able to tell that from what came next, in which case you could sort of work backwards and see like, oh yeah, that could be spelled as a German augmented 6 chord in the key of F sharp minor. And then we immediately go here to a passing 6/4 chord. And then on the next beat, notice that that one is a 5/4/2 chord in the key that we're actually in, going where they're supposed to go to 1/6. And then we have There's so many accidentals in the new key, right? G sharp, E sharp, G sharp again, B natural, and C sharp. There's our 5/4/3 of the key that we're in. We're just sort of stepping down at this point, down to 1. You could kind of call this a 1/4/2 by the last beat. Like right there. And then notice our friend is back. Sounds like a major minor 7th chord, but it's not actually behaving like that in this case because look where it resolves. Where they resolve is how you know which of these things you're dealing with. So here's just a German 6th chord being a German 6th chord. It's not enharmonically spelled. It's not resolving anywhere weird. And then it's doing exactly what it should be doing, which is going to a cadential 6/4. I like to write those separately. Like that. And then notice that we actually get 7, 5, 3 when it resolves. And back to 1. So now we're just going to stay in F minor for the cadence at this point. So here's our pack, and it's in F sharp minor, which is 3 relative to where we started. So these chords are tricky. They're designed, I think, to throw you off a little bit as a listener. And we started here. Remember how dissonant this is. So you can see how those chords just have so much interesting potential for modulations. It might be a little kind of intimidating from an analytical perspective at this point, but I think you'll become more comfortable with them. And the more we do with them, I think the more you'll actually start to really like them. So that's all for now, and I will be back in touch with you soon. Bye.